Episode 89, your unmuzzled sports talk, bringing you behind the scenes of the business world of sports. Thank you for joining us here on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, streaming live for our 89th episode. We are just talking off air, and we are already playing the 100th, apparently, even though we have 11 weeks to go. But we appreciate everybody for joining us tonight. We're going to be continuing the series that we started last week, where we're diving in to each NFL roster this offseason, and we're going to be taking away one thing that is extremely positive about this organization moving forward, and one thing that we think could be maybe a little bit of a stranglehold on success, a thing that may deter them to a degree. So this week, we started last week with the AFC South, AFC North. This week, we'll be taking on the AFC West and the AFC East. Of course, here joined by Mr. David Turner at Mav_sports, 18-year scouting vet across the NFL, CFL, and 3 straight Arena League championships with the Arizona Rattlers. David, we have another fun episode. I know I thoroughly enjoyed last week, kind of diving into the rosters on a lot of these teams and these organizations. Really like the series that we're kind of diving into. But as we do start with every single episode, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Everything is doing really well. I mean, I'm excited about this series as much as you are. I really enjoy doing this like this far out and seeing where we're going to end up and wind up. We just got to keep track of what we're saying a little bit better than we did last year. This way we can absolutely get our end of the year reflections on it, see where we were during the summer and how it played out during the season. So that's something that we got to track a little bit better than we did last year. But other than that, I'm excited because I think we're spot on so far, finishing off the AFC tonight with what the West and the East. And then next week we'll be diving into the NFC.
Yep. I mean, I think everything we're keeping track of for last year, everything that I said was true. It happens.
Did not happen. It was 100% false.
I pick the Rams? I think the Rams win the Super Bowl, right? I know it's a little bit of homerism that's injected there, but I feel like I did pick them to win the Super Bowl.
I don't think you did. I think you picked them as a playoff team. I don't know if you picked Super Bowl, but we're gonna make a spreadsheet this year. We're gonna put it together. We're gonna do a better job. So at the end of the year, we can really see how bad Ryan really is.
Well, we're interactive, so if you disagree with anything we say, you can put it in the chat now, or if there's something that you want us to go more in depth on a part of any of the teams that we're discussing, please put it in the chat. Before we begin, would you be a parent of a high school athlete trying to make it to the next level? If you answered yes, then why not secure coaching from an expert? Here at Maverick Sports Consulting, we work with high school athletes of all sports to create a strategy for the recruitment process. With limited scholarships given each and every year, especially with the transfer portal, having a pointed recruitment plan helps our clients secure opportunities to play collegiate sports. We focus on your transcripts, your film, leadership, and more to set up your goals and create pathways to get to them. Whether you're looking to attend an SEC school or Slippery Rock University, we can support your efforts to get to those goals in 2022 and beyond. Contact us at Maverick Sports Consulting today. So as David said, we're going to be working on the AFC East and AFC West. Thought that we would start with my father's favorite organization, the Miami Dolphins, an organization that you were also a part of, David. So you have some ties to the Miami Dolphins, of course. Want to start here, sir. What is something, because we're looking at this roster now. Of course, they had the Tyreek Hill trade. Jalen Waddle had a dynamic rookie year. Weapons are looking a whole lot better than they did this time last year. Kind of going into a make it or break it year for Tua Tagovailoa. The defense has some good parts to it, although we are breaking in a new coaching staff, obviously with Mike McDaniel taking over from Miami Dolphins. David, but give me a thing that you are feeling positive about with this organization moving forward, something that you think that can set them up for some success.
Well, I'll tell you, the weapons that Mike Daniels has on offense is very, very appealing. Like for his style of offense and how he does things, this offense is set up really, really well. I'm not a huge fan of having a lot of little receivers, and I know people are going to kill me on saying little, but shorter guys. I love Jalen Waddle, as you know. I love Tyreek Hill, as you know. Putting them on the same team, I'm worried about. Just because if they're both down the field guys, and which they kind of are, then you got to have Tua hold the ball longer. Now, the offensive line has gotten better, but it's still not the best. And so, therefore, I'm worried about that. Now, some people are like, oh, they're going to just throw it and let them make people miss. That's good for the beginning part of the year, but then when the coverages roll up a little bit, you got to have Tua take his shots, right? Now, what I like is that they still have Cedric Wilson. They added Chase Edmonds. Chase
Mhm.
Edmonds out here in Arizona when he was healthy was
Let's
a
go back.
huge, really huge weapon for him here, especially catching the ball out of the backfield. Adding that dynamic with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is just going to be stellar, I think. I'm not a huge Mike Gesicki fan, but again, working the middle of the field, Mike is a tall, long body. He's got a very large catch radius, so that will help Tua as well. And Cedric Wilson, I think he's an underrated receiver. I really like Cedric a lot. I think, again, he can play that almost Debo Samuel role in this offense. So, for me, it's going to be really fun for Mike. I think he has a lot of positives to hang his hat on and to be able to work with, a lot of people to work around. The defense is good. I'm not going to say they're great. They're not great. But here's the thing. I think this is a defense that can rank in the top 5 in the AFC. I think they can. They have a shot. I don't know this defensive coordinator really well, Josh Beyer. So I can't tell you what he's going to call, how he's going to call the game at this point in the year. So, for me, it's going to be a kind of wait and see on this defense. But if they're scoring 21, 24 points a game, putting pressure on, the other teams to score and keep up, that's going to be a really good position for this defense to play with.
So was that your negative or your crutch is that you just don't know 100% what to expect from the defense? Is that
I don't know the defensive coordinator. That's my
Yeah.
negative. That's my crutch. Is like, here's the thing. I don't know what the defense coordinator is going to bring to the table. I don't know if he's going to match the energy of his offense and what they have. The offensive weapon or the defensive weapons, I don't think are as deep as what they have on offense now.
Sure.
So again, your head coach, offensive guy, they invest a lot of money. They even went and got Sony Michel, right? So again, they invested in this offensive line. They did some stuff there. So we will wait and see, what the defense looks like and how this defense coordinator calls plays and calls defenses. That's the question mark crutch for me.
Yeah, I think that we agree about this team in a lot of instances, David. My biggest positive is going to be the pass catchers, man. Like there's not going to be many excuses left if Tua doesn't have a really good season. I know he's had spurts of good, but there's obviously been some injuries influxed in there and some inconsistencies as well, just from a play perspective. You have Tyreek Hill, who I could argue is one of the top, 2 or 3 just offensive weapons in the NFL, man. Like he could literally score anytime he has the football in his hands. We mentioned Jalen Waddle, who wasn't a high volume catcher for the Alabama Crimson Tide, but then he comes as a rookie and has over 1,000 yards on 100 catches, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, he's also got kind of the well-roundedness. I agree with you that I think that Cedric Wilson Jr. is a really good number 3 receiver. I think that he's going to surprise people. Mike Gesicki is a acquired taste, but I think in this offense, they can maximize his ability to work some run yards after the catch and use his athleticism in that offense. I think could be a big thing. My biggest crutch to this team, though, David, and we've talked about this in the past, especially last year. I like some of the improvements they made on the offensive line, but I'm not sold that in the entirety it's going to be great, to be honest. Because we mentioned this, I think we talked about this last week or maybe the week before. I like Teron Armstead. I mean, he's one of the best left tackles in the NFL. The issue I have is that you're playing in blindside money, obviously, but Tua is a lefty, so right tackle wouldn't actually be his blind side. I'm still good with it because, I mean, you had to upgrade tackle, and you certainly did with Teron Armstead. So we're there. That's a really good football player. But outside of that, like I like Robert Hunt a lot. I think he's going to be a really good right guard. But right tackle is an issue still. I mean, you have Austin Jackson, who has failed at left tackle, failed at left guard, and now you're going to sell me that he's going to be a good right tackle, serviceable player there. Not buying that. And then right now, at least on our lads, it has, and I know there's probably a competition that's going to happen, but it has Liam Eichenberg slated as the starting left guard, and he was another guy that was very underwhelming as a rookie. Hopefully he takes a step forward, but he was just not great last year in 2021. Hopefully, again, he has a second-year jump, but he's a question mark. And then the other big acquisition you had on the offensive line this offseason was Connor Williams, who I think is a pretty solid player that came over from Dallas, But the issue I have is that right now he's projected to start at center, and he's never started a game at center, right? Like, so like that is even projection. So I look at this offensive line, I'm like, okay, right guard, you're good. Left tackle, you're really good. Right tackle's a question. Left guard's a question. Center's a question. I think you still have 3 out of 5 that are just question marks for that offensive line right now, which is it better? Is it going to be better than last year? Yes. It could not have gotten worse, but is it going to be good enough? I guess is my question mark.
Well, and the other question, I agree with you 100%. They might have been smarter to play Williams at left guard and then found a different center, right?
Yeah.
But the other question is, and do we see this happening? Does Tua have a short hook? Because you do got the Teddy B hanging out right behind him. And Teddy B had a decent season with up there in Denver. So, is it a situation where if Tua through the first 4 games struggles, do they pull him and put Teddy B in to try to make the rest of the season go? Or does the rookie coach just roll with Tua all year? That's a question mark that comes up as well when you look at the roster. I think the defensive coordinator and what he calls to me is a bigger question mark because positivity is coming out of there about Tua and picking up the offense and everything. And I think Tua is a very smart quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I don't think there's any learning curve there with him. But when you went and picked up a guy like Teddy B that was a starter just a year ago and put him behind a guy who other organizations or other coaching staffs might have been looking to replace Tua, that's a big room right there to put TB behind him.
Right. No, and we'll see how it works out. I think it's good though with a quarterback that's had some injury concerns, having a guy like Bridgewater, who, although Bridgewater is nothing special, he can at least keep you afloat, right? Like he can at least do a solid enough job, and he's certainly got weapons there. So we'll see Miami Dolphins, hoping obviously for the best. We're going to move on to the Buffalo Bills, David, who I would venture to call maybe Super Bowl favorites with the roster they have constructed, to be honest. Like I'll start us out here since you started the last one. But I mean, what gives me optimism? It's a really good roster, man. Like there's just not many holes in this team. Like the offensive line has some dudes, wide receivers. We've got Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis had a big game there in the playoffs, like 200 yards, 4 touchdowns. You have one of the better young quarterbacks in the NFL in Josh Allen, who just had a fantastic season. And defensively, you're bringing over Von Miller from the Super Bowl champion, LA Rams. You have a really good secondary with Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and Tre'Davious White coming back from injury. There's not much holes in this team, man. So my biggest positive is that you've constructed a great roster. Shout out to Bean over there, man. He's put together a really, really good roster. That's a Super Bowl level roster, in my opinion. And the only negative I'll say is that you had Brian Daboll, who was a really good offensive coordinator over the last couple of years. I think Ken Dorsey will be fine because he's been in the building, right? But there is some changing of the guard from an offensive play perspective because you still have Sean McDermott, obviously, who's going to be leading his defense. But my main question mark is, what's the offense going to look like under Ken Dorsey? I would think that structurally it'll look the same, but until you see him call a game, you don't 100% know what's coming for you as far as Ken Dorsey, right? So that's kind of just it's kind of a minute concern, man, because this roster is really loaded. No lie about it.
And I was with Kent down in Carolina, so I'm not really excited about what I'm going to see, being honest with you. I like Kent as an individual. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a very good guy, and I think he's an excellent quarterback coach. I just don't know if his mentality is one. When I've been around really good play callers, they're a little bit of gamblers. And Ken, to me, is a more stable field general type guy. I don't see a lot of gambling. Josh Allen himself, I think, I don't know if he's much of a gambler by nature, but I think Daboll, with some of his play calling last year, focusing especially later or, in the playoffs, with Gabriel Davis, even, getting that, 3 or 4 touchdowns in that game, he would go to that third receiver. He got away from Diggs. He got away from the little white receiver. What's his name?
Cole Beasley.
Colby, and he would go to Gabriel, and Gabriel Davis was picking people apart and stuff. So again,
Austin Knox is a decent tight end as well. He had a pretty good season for them. Yeah.
Dawson, he had a great season. When he got hurt, I think it took a little teeth out of the offense, to be honest with you, because he was somebody that people just didn't respect early in the year, and then he came on late, and he really was an incredible player for them. And again, he fit their system. They pick up OJ Howard in the offseason, right? They pick up Jamison Crowder. So, and again, they have a very solid offensive line, all set up, really, like you said, really well-constructed roster. The defense, they got a very solid front four, adding front three, and then adding Von Miller to it. Just incredible. So we, like you said, we know what we're getting on defense here. We're questioning the play calling right now. That's the big question mark looming over them because it's just a new play caller. It's probably going to take a few games to get into a rhythm. So we'll see what happens. But that all being said, picking up James Cook in the draft, I thought was a really good draft pick to help out the running game because we saw Zach Moss just not really panning out. He's kind of failing to step up and take over the role. Devin Singletary is a great receiving back and running back, but I think Cook is going to be a really solid addition. I love that pick for them when they picked him up. That was great. So, again, I think this is a team that, like you said, is in the Super Bowl conversation. Absolutely. And with the division they're in, they should win this division. They really shouldn't have trouble winning this division. And that should put them in a rank where the road to the Super Bowl could be running through Buffalo.
And I really like Sean McDermott a ton, man. Like, he's one of my favorite head coaches in the NFL right now. I remember when he was with the Eagles, he was, unfortunately, if I remember correctly, he was the defensive coordinator that took over after Jim Johnson passed away. And it was just like, he got thrown into a tough situation, man. Jim Johnson was a legend, and McDermott did not do too well. And I remember he got fired at Philly, which is pretty ironic kind of to think about now, which is, just a little tidbit there. Dave, I want to move on to New England. This is a weird roster. I'm just going to phrase it as that, man. I'll start here again, and I'll let you end with the New York Jets. So some of the key additions this offseason, they traded for Devontae Parker, the wide receiver from the Miami Dolphins. They also drafted Cole Strange, who's projected to start at left guard, their first-round pick out of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Outside of that, not a ton of new acquisitions. Some of the mainstays on the defense include Matthew Judon, who had a really nice season last year coming over from Baltimore. They got a couple, as Dave will call them, hogmalas inside with Christian Barmore, the second-year player out of Alabama, and Lawrence Guy, who I feel like is one of the more underrated interior defensive linemen. So, David, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say the positives for me. I think they're going to be strong in the trenches, man. I do. I think this offensive line is going to be really good. David Andrews, one of the more underrated centers in the league. Mike Onwenu is slated to start at right guard. He has played some right tackle also in the past, and he is one of the better young offensive linemen in the NFL. I like Cole Strange. I think it was a little early in the first round to draft Cole Strange, just a little bit. But when I say a little bit, I mean probably 2 rounds. But
I was gonna say that's more than a cup of water early.
I had a 3rd round grade on Cole Strange. That being said, I like Cole. I think he's going to start in the NFL and be a good player, but he just should not have been a 1st-round pick. Love Cole though. But anyway, I think Cole's going to do a solid job at left guard. I also just think that if Isaiah Wynn can stay healthy, offensive tackle, still a pretty young guy out of Georgia. Only he's coming into his 4th year, if I remember correctly. He's a good player, man. He's a really good player. It's just the injury bug has cost him a little bit. And Trent Brown, although he's not a star, is a good offensive tackle in the NFL. Like, he's a good, solid football player. So your offensive line, I think, should be one of the better ones in the NFL. And I think it's going to be a tough time to run the football against the New England Patriots next year, man. Because I mentioned Barmore and Guy, who are really good players inside. But you also have Matthew Judon, who I mentioned as well. And then Jawan Bentley is a really underrated inside linebacker, man. Like, he packs a wallop. He's not the guy that you want in coverage much, but like as a 2-down run stopper, my guy gets it done. So I think the biggest positives for me, David, are I think they're going to be really stout inside on both the offensive and the defensive side of the football, which is how you build good rosters, right? Build through inside and out. I like it a ton. My biggest question is simply that I just don't know how explosive this passing attack can be. I mean, we've talked about Mac Jones. Mac Jones had a solid to good rookie year. Well, it was solid, and I think that we know what Mac Jones is. He's not going to kill you, but I don't know if he's going to necessarily win a football game for you when it really matters. So you have a quarterback, in my opinion, with some limitations, and you have a bunch of as receivers, right? Like you have Jacoby Myers, who's solid. You have Kendrick Bourne, who is a solid 3 to 4 receiver. You have Nelson Aguilar, who's always injured or inconsistent. And then you have Devontae Parker, who is always, emphasizes, always injured or inconsistent. So I struggle with seeing how this passing attack is going to be consistent. I think they're going to become a little one-dimensional just because I don't think they're going to be able to create explosive plays in the passing game.
This is a move the sticks type offense is what I would call it. Just looking at the roster, it's get first downs and chop wood, get into the red zone, and then let your running game take over down there and pound it into the end zone. That's me. I love that they picked up Hunter Henry at tight end. I do. I think that's going to be a huge help for this offense. I still like Smith. Was it Jonnu Smith? And I think Smith and Henry together are going to make a really nice 12 package for them. Add in Parker and Bourne, and I think that's a very tough lineup in the red zone because that's a lot of size and girth and people that can get open and they have good hands, make good adjustments. I think from the 15 on in, you use 11 personnel, but once you get into the 9-yard line, you just go 12 personnel with this team and you run with these backs. With Stevenson and Harris, and you pound the ball into it, or you wind up just throwing a ball up for Hunter Henry or Devontae Parker because Parker, when you get into the red zone, he's got a great catch radius, incredible forgiving red zone kind of. I like him a lot. I really like the size of him, and his hands are soft. Yeah, it's injury prone. I get that 100%, but again, if you have a run first offense, which we think they will be, we both agree. The question mark I have big time is offensive coordinator. It's vacant. He hasn't named an offensive coordinator yet. We don't know who's going to be calling plays. We also know that
who's going to be calling plays, David. Have you heard the rumor?
No, I actually haven't. I haven't heard it.
Matt Patricia is the rumor.
Oh my God. See, that's what I'm saying. If Patricia's calling plays, I was going to say, you got Patricia and you got the old head coach, Joe Judge, both working on offense. One's working with a line. One's going to maybe call offensive plays. Okay, see, that to me is where this train's going to come off the tracks, because Patricia's a train wreck. And while he might be able to coach and know defense, it's not something you can come up and understand offense. I don't care how smart, what kind of rocket scientist you are. Play calling is a rhythm thing, and this is something you got to have some rhythm. And when you look at Matt Patricia, do you think rhythm? I don't think rhythm.
I think of a pencil with a laminated sheet. That's all I think of.
Exactly. I think
that's not much. That's not much of a rocket scientist, in my opinion.
Right. So if that's the true thing, I think that's what the hamstring is going to be. I think that's going to be a person that struggles with calling plays, knowing rhythm, and how to call it. And then you'll see a lot of running plays. These backs will get beat down early. And then later in the year, when they need a running game, you might have beat up backs because he ran them too early in the season. So again, it's all about rhythm, knowing play call, play counts, and managing your offensive players in the practice as well as during the season. And Patricia just struggled with that a lot up in Detroit when he was a head coach. So I don't know if he's going to be really, truly going to be able to handle it here as an offensive guy. But that's my biggest thing. Like you said, I think this defense has a shot to be very good, very stout. Mm-hmm. I think they have players that definitely get pressure on the quarterback. So this is a defense up front that can turn the ball over, put them in really good position, especially in their division. Again, I don't have a huge ton of respect of what Miami's offensive line looks like. And the Jets, when we get there, this is going to be fun, right? But Buffalo will be the one that they really have to compete against. So out of the 6 division games, they have 4 that are very winnable, right? And then they have 2 to battle with Buffalo.
Speaking of the New York Jets, David, I am looking at this roster right now, this depth chart, projected depth chart on our lads, and I think it's conceivable that the first 4 selections in the 2022 NFL draft could all start game 1 as rookies, which is pretty crazy, right? They are looking at Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Jermaine Johnson, and Sauce Gardner. I think all could potentially start for this team as a rookie. And usually that means they're building toward the future. I don't think that most people expect the New York Jets to be a great football team in 2022. I think what they're looking for is improvement, right? Like take a step, and then you have some young guns who I'm excited about, man. Like that rookie class, I think is going to be pretty special eventually for the New York Jets long term. So I'm going to kick it over to you though before I get too far into that. So again, they got all the rookies. Second year of Zach Wilson hopefully takes a step forward. No huge acquisitions outside of the rookies. I think they got Jordan Whitehead, who's a pretty solid safety from Tampa Bay. But otherwise, they are building through the draft for the most part, David. So something positive about the New York Jets, and then you can hit it with something that may be a cause for concern.
Again, I thought the general manager did an incredible draft again this year. Now, last year's draft, I was shaking my head all over the place. His first draft, I loved it, loved what he did. Last year's draft, I didn't understand a word of it. It was like he wrote a whole different language for me. Okay. Didn't get it at all. This year's draft, loved it again. Sauce, my favorite corner in the draft. I loved him. As long as he stays healthy and everything, Sauce is going to be a really fantastic corner. Garrett Wilson was probably my second favorite receiver in the draft. Might be the most talented receiver, even though I just like a different one better because of personality and grit and grind and toughness, all that stuff that I put weight on. But Garrett Wilson might be the most talented out of all of them. I don't know. Jameson is really up there too. And, there's other, Olave is talented too, as well as Michi and some others. So, there's, like I said, there was a good crop of talent receivers in this draft. But what Garrett might have been the cream of the crop. To get him, to get Sauce, and then to come back up and get Jermaine Johnson, who slid, that was just stealing. That was stealing. And then to find Bryce in the second round, sitting there looking at him in the face, who was one of the top 1 or 2, maybe 3 running backs in this draft.
Oh, the best draft. The best running back in this draft, in my opinion.
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that was, they got really 3, or like you said, 4 first rounders, in those 4 first picks. So to see them all starting, it, like you said, some might say it's a rebuilding year, but the talent they secured with those first 4 draft picks were really amazing. I also like that they did go get CJ Uzomah, the tight end from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
When he's healthy, he was an incredible weapon for them in Cincinnati this year. He really had brought a lot of teeth to it. If he heals up and he's good, that will be a very good get for them on this offense, because that was a position at tight end I didn't really think they had a lot of depth at or had a lot of talent at. Getting Conklin too, they made an investment. Now they got a 12 personnel package where Conklin is on the line, and then Ooze is moving, your move guy, and then you can come in and use, Garrett and Elijah and Corey Davis. It could be really fun, and Bryce can catch a ball, obviously, out of the backfield too. My biggest question mark, obviously, is the quarterback. I am not a fan of Zach Wilson. They still have Joe Flacco.
Oh, you're not? Oh, you're not?
Yeah, shocker. I don't like him. I'm not a fan of his. I don't think he's the next coming of anybody. So, and then they didn't do much of the backup. They have Joe Flacco and they have Mike White, but those two are just hold place guys. So if Zach gets hurt or something happens there, the one weak spot is his quarterback room, in my opinion, because that you got a really old guy in Joe. I think he's a great mentor. I think he'll teach Zach, show him a lot of stuff. But again, if he has to play, you're in trouble. And if Mike White has to play, you're in more trouble. So that's that. I think on defense, they have guys to pass rush. I think this is the year we're going to see if Zala really can, the head coach can really take advantage of what he's got on defense, put it into play, and see what it, see if it's going to look anything like the defenses he had out there at the 49ers.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be interesting to see New York, man, because David, I'll say this. Joe Douglas, from when he first took over to now, the roster looks so much different, man. Like, it is such a better roster than it once was. So I'm hoping New York gets better, man. I hope.
Oh,
I'm a big fan.
I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of Joe. I consider him a friend. Him and Rex over there, consider them friends.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of both of those guys. And like I said, the first year they came in and drafted, I was raving about the draft. Last year, I scratched my head. This year, I'm raving again. I think they figured out their identity a little bit better this year, and they really attacked and got guys that will be cornerstones for them for years to come.
Yeah. And we're going to move into AFC West in a second. We're going to kind of secure some deep understanding of these roster. Before, though, have you secured any sponsorships with your name, image, and likeness yet? No. Well, what's keeping you from earning money or gaining products today? Probably that you don't have access to companies. Maverick Sports Consulting can connect those dots for you. We believe in the power of athletes making a living off of their own likeness while going to college. If it's simply that you don't have access to companies, don't let that keep you from being successful. Contact us at Maverick Sports Consulting so we can help you to navigate your pathway to gaining corporate sponsorships for your collegiate career. An athlete's earning potential is limited. Why wait until tomorrow to start earning today? It doesn't matter what sport you play. We help all our athletes and our clients achieve their goals. Just contact us at Maverick Sports Consulting. TikTok, the clock is ticking. All right, David, I'm going to start us out here with the Denver Broncos. And, of course, the player that everyone's going to want to talk about, and for good reason, is that they have acquired Russell Wilson this offseason as their quarterback. And that has to be, in my opinion, David, the biggest optimism here, right? You in with a new regime, Nathaniel Hackett takes over as the head coach for this team, and you bring in a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And Russell Wilson has been one of the better quarterbacks over the last decade, and he's a fantastic football player. So it's the face of the franchise, man. So I'm going to have to say quarterback is the biggest positive and the thing that can most get you pumped up about the future of this team, because I would argue over the last couple of years, Denver Broncos have had a pretty good roster, man. They literally, and I think it's a cliche, I really do, but they may have legitimately contended that they are a quarterback away. Well, now you have your quarterback. It's a really good quarterback. He's a future Hall of Fame quarterback that is coming to play in what should be perceived to maybe be in the best years of his career coming up, because he's, 33, I think, 32, 33. So, that's kind of the twilight of a quarterback's career usually. This is probably when he's going to be playing his best football in theory, and he's got some guys to throw the football to. Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy can stay healthy, hopefully. There's some guys at receiver, man. So I'm excited that they have their best quarterback since they had Peyton Manning, who also won them a Super Bowl. So that's optimistic, I think. My biggest question mark, man, is that, be very honest about this one, and we talked about this one, I think, after some of the coaching hires, not really a fan of the Nathaniel Hackett thing as the head coach personally. I think he's a decent offensive coordinator, man, but there's just, every time I hear him speak, I'm just I don't know if you convince me you're a head coach, and some guys are just good coordinators and there's nothing wrong with it, but he just doesn't give me head coaching vibes, right? So I have coaching question marks, but they have Russell Wilson, which can help for a lot of things. So that's kind of my optimistic view. And then I wouldn't even call it a negative crutch. I would just say it's a wait and see on what type of coach Nathaniel Hackett is.
So you just called him Norv Turner.
Norv Turner is one of the greatest offensive coordinators of all time. There's nothing wrong with being Norv Turner. That's fine. Hey, man. Some guys are great play callers, great designers of a scheme. That's awesome. Doesn't mean you're a great head coach, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
I'm not bagging on Norv. I've worked with him 4 or 3 different places. I really enjoy him. I enjoy sitting and talking ball with him. But I'm just saying exactly what you said, is that he's incredibly one of the top 5 offensive coordinators, maybe even top 3 offensive coordinators I ever sat and talked football with. But as a head coach, he just never panned out. It just never was his thing to take over that lead seat. But yeah, you could put him in an offensive coordinator role, and that guy could call plays. He had rhythm. He knew what was coming. He could take advantage of a whole play calling sheet and he knew how to practice players. He knew how to give players days off. Like, he was a very good manager of an offensive roster for sure. That being said, going back to this, I absolutely love the Russell Wilson addition to this team. I think, like you said, for the last 2 years, they've really been a quarterback away. This roster had gotten better. George Paton, since coming in, has taken advantage of not only free agency, but the wire, practice squad acquirements, offseason, drafting. I mean, he's utilized every trick and tool in the book, I should say, not even trick, but tool in the book, to get it all working and make sure this roster is sewn up. And he has very good tight ends. I think he has very good young receiving core like Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Judy. I'm a huge fan of all three of those guys. I think they're going to be fun to watch together, especially now that they have a quarterback that can get it inside their catching radius and inside their frame and not expose their ribs as much as they have been exposed. So, yeah, it'll be good. And then, obviously the offensive line, it's good. It's not great. It's not stellar, but it's good. And it's going to be the best offensive line Russell Wilson's played behind in a number of years. So he'll have some time to throw and go. And ultimately, those running backs they have there, Williams and keeping Gordon with Williams, I think that's a great 1-2 combination there. Those guys had some incredible stats last year. It seemed like no matter which game it was, one of them was rushing for over 100 yards. And I think there's even a couple games where they both got over 100 yards or close to it. So, I think that's a great 1-2 punch there. Again, another thing Russell Wilson hasn't had is consistent running the ball and consistency in the backfield since Marshawn Lynch left that organization in Seattle. So I love this offense. I really think it's going to be fun to watch. This team's going to be fun to watch. The defense, adding Randy Gregory to this defense, I'm not the biggest Randy Gregory fan, but again, with the rest of the team and what they are putting around with, having Chubb on the other side and Gregory, that's really a stellar 1-2 punch there at pass rush. And then Pat Surtain, who we both love in the corner race, and Kareem Jackson being there with Pat Surtain in the defensive backfield and Justin Simmons and Ronald Darby and stuff. I think they've done an excellent job of building a very deep roster here and a very good one. The biggest question mark, again, is coaching. What are we going to see out of these new young coaches? We don't have a lot of veterans. When adversity hits, are these young coaches going to be able to coach them out of it? Are they going to be able to get them to lead them through it? Or is that going to be a problem? I think with the veteran leadership that you have, though, with Russell Wilson, because he's seen a lot of adversity, that will help this young coaching staff.
Agree. Very well said. And I will move on now, David, to the Kansas City Chiefs, who the Chiefs. So the Kansas City Chiefs are breaking in a couple new receivers this offseason. Of course, they traded Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins. They have Juju Smith-Schuster coming over from the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have Marquez Valdes-Scantling coming over from the Green Bay Packers. They also have Josh Gordon. I think Josh Gordon was also already on the roster technically, but didn't do a ton last year. And then Sky Moore is their rookie receiver that they drafted in the second round. George Karlaftis is their big defensive end addition during the draft that I was a fan of in the pre-draft process. So obviously, David, the biggest question mark is, and they also got Trent McDuffie in the first round, the cornerback out of Washington. But their biggest question marks for me, actually, no, we'll let you go first. I just took the thunder on the last one, David. So something that Kansas City has that makes you feel positive, and then what is something that you think could hold them back?
Well, the biggest positive is Pat Mahomes. Let's just put it where it belongs. This is a young, dynamic player, and if he's healthy, he can throw all over the yard from any position. Arm positions are, up and down all over. He can throw at many different levels and get it anywhere he wants. So this is a precision passer that really has a lot of tools to work with when he's healthy. We saw him break down with a couple injuries and, struggle a little bit, but that playoff game with Buffalo and him, like, Buffalo and the Kansas City Chiefs was one of the greatest playoff games I've ever seen. That was Clubber Lang and Rocky in the middle of the ring, just throwing blows back and forth, back and forth. It was amazing. And even at the end, like I was screaming at the TV for Buffalo to play, more of a quarter style defense and, get up and, press and then play behind a little bit, only rush 3, but they blew that call. But besides that, it was a really, really fun game to watch and dynamic. I like, again, I think that the receivers are my biggest question mark. I like Marquez Scanlon. Obviously, I like him more as a 2 and a 3 type role. Juju Schuster to me, underperformed the last couple of years, and Hardman, I see him more of as 3. So I'm seeing 2s and 3s here more than anything. I'm not seeing a stellar. I know they still have Kelsey at tight end, who's a big time playmaker. Blake Bell's a solid number 2 tight end. That all makes sense to me. But these receivers, I just don't know if it's dynamic enough to be with the quarterback that you have. When you had Tyreek Hill, who could take the top off, who made people respect that deep ball at all times, at any time. In a broken play, people were holding their butt cheeks because Tyreek was going to roll down the sidelines and take one off the top, so that safety could never come down and really play low. Otherwise, Tyreek was going to go get him. So that's something I don't see that kind of teeth in this offense anymore without Tyreek Hill. So that's my biggest question mark. Defensively, I think, again, the rookie kid that they took in the first round, George.
They got 2 in the first round, George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie.
I'm not a Trent McDuffie guy like you. Taking a nickel type defender in the first round to me is not what I put my money on, especially when there were receivers that could have helped this offense sitting you and looking you in the face at that point. Like I would have went more receiver at that point to get that teeth back. I just traded Tyreek Hill. I'm going to put some teeth in it. I'm going to get one of these receivers and put them in there for the offense. And I'm not going to go draft a nickel. So that's me. That's personal. I'm not ripping the kid. I'm just saying strategy-wise, not my strategy on building a team. I think they needed a little bit, on defense. I would have liked a solid second corner. I think they have a good corner, but I would have liked a little bit better, upgrade there too in the draft. But hey, it is what it is. The hay's in the barn. You got to play with what you got pretty much now. So we'll see how it all plays out, how it all plans out. But the biggest positives, obviously, you got Pat Mahomes. The biggest question mark are these receivers going to step up and fill the void of Tyreek Hill? And we're going to find playmakers here that are going to really complement this offense, and you're not going to lose the scoring ability, because that's what really helped their defense each and every year and every game, I should say, is that they were most of the time their opponents were playing from behind.
You're a hater, David. You're a hater.
I'm a realist.
I'm just kidding. No, I know. I'm just messing with you anyway. That lighting that just happened to my screen was weird, by the way. That was odd. So I agree with you. Biggest negative for me is that you didn't find an adequate replacement. Then I know there's not many in the NFL to a Tyreek Hill, though, right? Like you don't have a guy that Marquez Valdes-Scantling can create some explosive plays, but he's not Tyreek Hill, honestly, right?
He's taller, obviously, he's bigger hands.
Right. He's going to create his explosive plays in a lot different ways than a Tyreek Hill. You're missing the yak element to a Tyreek Hill and the dynamic 3-level threat that Tyreek Hill is, right? So that's going to be a negative. Juju, I think, is a solid number 2 to number 3 receiver. To your point, I don't think that he's a guy that you're going to depend on to be a high volume guy on this offense, but he may have to be a high volume guy on this offense, because I think this offense is also, they're going to have to change how they do things a little bit, right? Like you're not going to hit a bunch of home runs with these wide receivers. You're going to hit a lot. You're going to hit singles and doubles. Like you're going to have to be a little more methodical than you have been in the past. Like you're not going to be able to push the ball as much as you once have with Pat Mahomes. Now, the biggest positives for me, David, is I think they can make that shift because, one, you have a really great quarterback in Pat Mahomes, obviously. Best quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. And they have a really good offensive line. Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey last year as a rookie was fantastic. Trey Smith as a 6th-round rookie was fantastic. Orlando Brown's a good offensive tackle. 4 out of 5
Smith was a
Ar-
steal in the 6th round.
Steal. I know. Well, I know he had the blood clots in his lungs and all that
Yeah,
type
we
of
know
stuff.
why
But
he
yeah.
fell with medical stuff, but still, he was a steal
Oh,
for what the
I
production they got out of him.
I had
Good.
a.
And Humphreys was a steal in the 2nd round. You and I were
I
both in
know,
the 1st round trying to push him on some teams in the 1st round
man.
because he's such a good player. So for them to get him in the 2nd round and to get Trey in the 6th, and those are
Yeah.
2 starters, and the production they got out of both of them, steal.
I know. Trey was a big home run for me too, man, because it was like obviously I knew the medicals were going to drop him seriously. I didn't even think it was going to be that much though. I was thinking like maybe he'd be like a 3rd to 4th round type of flyer, right? But I had a late 1st round grade on him, so I was a big fan of Trey Smith, and they got tremendous value. They got a stalwart as a starting offensive guard for years to come in Trey Smith. So good on them. So that's a really good building blocks. And I mean, again, I think having Andy Reid back as your head coach, having Eric Bieniemy back as your offensive coordinator, there's familiarity. I think the offense, again, it's going to look different, but I think they can weather this storm of losing Tyreek Hill because I think they have an offensive line in place. I think they have the people making decisions in place, and they have their quarterback in place. So when you have all 3 of those, I think you're going to be okay. But there are going to be question marks about what does this offense look like from a passing perspective, just because you don't have the weapons that you've had in the past. So it's going to look different, but I think they can weather the storm, David. Want to move on. A team that's very close to Mr. David Turner's heart. I kind of want to leave them for last, but we're going to jump on to the LA Raiders. What's that?
The what Raiders?
Oh, God, I said LA again. Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry. They've been in too many places, man. Oakland, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. They've been in too many spots. Big acquisition this offseason. Big acquisition this offseason.
He's old.
Big acquisition this offseason. Davante Adams is traded over to them from the Green Bay Packers, arguably the best receiver in the NFL. You have Josh McDaniels coming in as the head coach for this team. Those are the 2 biggest acquisitions, obviously. Anytime you have a player to Adams' caliber as well as a new head coach, it's going to be big things. They also signed Chandler Jones this offseason, who's been a very good pass rusher for the Arizona Cardinals over the last few years, although he's been dealt with a little bit of injury over the last couple. I think he still had like 10.5 sacks this year. I think he missed pretty much the whole season the year prior, though. So he's been beat up a little bit, but you're getting one of the best pass rushers of this generation, David. You're getting one of the best pass catchers of this generation, and you're getting a new head coach. So if I'm going to look at the positives here, I'm excited for this next era, man. I mean, like you got some additions that give you hope. I'm not a big Josh McDaniels fan. I'm not, and I will be very forthcoming about that. I'm just not a big Josh fan, right? But Davante Adams is a stud. You got him. I think that Max Crosby and Chandler Jones is going to be one of the best 1-2 punches as far as pass rushing goes from the edge positions. They're going to be fantastic. So I think that the additions have you feeling really good about this team. My biggest question mark by far is a secondary in this offensive line, man. This offensive line is not good. They have Alex Leatherwood that is slated to move back out to right tackle, David. That's going to be fun.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah. The only good offensive lineman that has been a good player in the NFL consistently is Colton Miller, the left tackle. He's a good football player. The rest of it, not great. And then your secondary is also not very good, man. I like Trevon Merrick as their one of their starting safeties, but you have Rock Ya-Sin, Trayvon Mullins, okay. Jonathan Abram has been a bust since being a first-round pick out of Mississippi State. So you are weak in the secondary. You're weak at offensive line. Those are obviously 2 incredible hurdles to go over, but they do have some excitement, obviously, with the newcomers they have on this roster.
Well, I'll say this offense with Renfro, Adams, and Waller and Jacobs, get the fuck out of here. Like, seriously. Like, that lineup, I mean, Jacobs is one of my favorite running backs right now in the NFL. I enjoy his running style. I enjoy how he gets downhill fast. He's got close quarter quickness, good vision. Again, I enjoy Josh Jacobs' running style. I appreciated it last year a lot more than I had in the year past, but I enjoyed him. And I think Kenyon Drake is an incredible second, and Brandon Bolden obviously comes over from New England, so that he knows the system and everything, right? That's a great lineup there at the running back position. Davante Adams, Renfro, and Waller. Like Demarcus Robinson adding to the roster is good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. But I see that this is just it's just really incredible to have Davante Adams on that offense with Renfro and Waller. Because now you got a triple-headed pass offense. What are you gonna do? You line up a 2-by-1 with Waller on the backside, and he's on a corner. That's a mismatch. If you flop corners over, now you got a safety on Waller, and what are you going to do there? I mean, Adams, you double cover Adams, Renfro is going to run a route to get you wide ass open. And if you don't double cover Adams, Waller's on one-on-one, and you got Adams one-on-one, and you got Renfro doubled up. I mean, it's really a headache for a lot of chess match here. I know the offensive line has Swiss cheese. Don't get me wrong. I know the offensive line has Swiss cheese. But with those guys in the pattern at all times, you really have weapons to spread the ball around. And, Derek Carr is a quarterback that can spread the ball around. You could easily have at halftime 5 receivers having 3 or 4 catches apiece that he could throw the ball around that way. Jacobs could catch a couple out of the backfield. Waller get his 4. Obviously, Adams get his 4, and Renfro get his 4, and then Robinson get another 2. I mean, just add that up right there. That's almost 20 plays. It's about 16, 18 plays in the offense. And in half, you might run 30 plays. So I think that's going to be a really fun offense to watch. The running backs, like I said, I like them a lot. You're dead on with Crosby and Jones doing a 1-2 punch. Jones has been nicked up a little bit, but I think they're going to play him a little different here than they played him down here in Arizona. People will run at Jones, trying to nick him up and try to get after him. So that will be we'll see how they manage him and how the second tier comes in and starts playing. But that all being said, I like their middle linebackers, being honest with you, here in I almost called them Oakland, in Las Vegas, Brown and Perriman. And I like those two, middle linebackers. I think those guys are going to be able to play well in this defense and this defensive scheme. And it'll be interesting. There's this 3-4 scheme that they're going to, that they have slated, will be very interesting to see how this makeup meshes, because last year they were more of a 40 front, and they played really well together, and everybody had their hand in the dirt. So we'll see how this works. But I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. You're 100% right. John Abram bust. Absolute and atrocious player. He has no instincts. He doesn't take good angles at all coming to the ball. He's a guided missile that often misses. So, but I'll say, like you, the one player you didn't mention that I think really needs to stay healthy for them this year, because when he went out last year, a lot of the defense struggled, and I think it will be the same this year, is Nate Hobbs. This kid, they found him in the 5th round out of Illinois. He was a guy that I called was a Raiders player because of his workout that I saw from the spring workouts. I was like, wow, and this is old school Raider workout type guy right here that we would take just because of his numbers and his measurables. And he stepped in and was an incredible nickelback. He really was a leader back there. When he got nicked up with his shoulder, they missed him. And I don't think that defense is deep enough to go without him. So it's something that if he gets dinged up again, we'll have to watch that. But that all being said, I think this is a team that they have a chance to finish second in the division. I think they're more likely to finish third, because Kansas City and Denver, to me, are going to battle out for 1 and 2, in my opinion. This is a team that's going to battle for a wild card spot, and they have the offense to do it. They really can put a lot of pressure on a lot of teams with this offense.
Nate Hobbs, former College Gridiron Showcase participant, by the way, David. That was a nice find by the folk down there.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Shut up. It's funny that you just said, you named 3 of the teams, because we haven't talked about the Los Angeles Chargers, who are kind of the trendy pick, David. For some people think that they could be a dark horse to be a playoff team this year after finishing 8-9, and they Obviously, have a really good young quarterback in Justin Herbert, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he threw like 38 touchdowns last year as a second-year quarterback. And they have signed this offseason Khalil Mack, fantastic player, obviously. They've also signed good contributors such as Sebastian Joseph Day, Kyle Van Noy, and they broke the bank also by bringing over J.C. Jackson, the cornerback for New England, who has had like 17 interceptions in the last 2 years, like some crazy number like that, right? So the Chargers, if I can start us here, there's a lot of optimism and there's a lot of energy around that program. And it comes from sort of how I just talked a little bit about the Las Vegas Raiders and some of the additions they made. The Los Angeles Chargers were very, very aggressive this offseason. So they signed some really good football players, and they have a franchise quarterback that is still on a rookie contract. So those are two things to be really excited about. My biggest question mark for him, David, and I like him to a degree. I think that Brandon Staley is a really good defensive mind as their head coach. But I watched a couple of the games last year where I think there were just some very highly questionable decisions. He is very analytically driven, which I was watching a game last year. I think it was the last game of the season where it was 4th and 2 from like their own 30-yard line. He went for it and did not get it. And I was just like, brother. But then the response is, of course, analytics says that it's better to go for it on 4th down. Like, okay, guy, well, it didn't work for you in that situation, right? So we're going to be hypercritical of you. So I question it. I don't know. It's just a question to answer, right? I think Brandon Staley's a really good defensive mind, and I think he's a good defensive coach. Is he a head coach at this level? That remains to be seen. But David, I mean, this could be one of the better Charger rosters we've seen in a few years. There's a lot of talent to like in this very tough division, very difficult division.
They spent to make a run, and this is easily on paper probably the hardest division in football next year, because there's 4 quarterbacks that all are big time arm quarterbacks. Okay, you have talent up and down each of these rosters, as we talked about, right? Like we're not that negative on that many of these rosters. We are pretty positive on all 4 of these rosters, right? I just think that what Denver and Kansas City have are just a little bit better in my mind. Now, the coaching in Denver is their question mark. We'll see, right? You just said the coaching here is a question mark. The coaching that you said you're not a big fan of, Josh McDaniels in Vegas. So that's a question mark. The only coaches that we don't have a question mark on, Kansas City. There we have some player questions, some roster questions, right? On the offensive side. And if the defense can hold up to not being in the lead all the time. Here, they did. They went and spent really big money on the cornerback. They went, like you said, and got Khalil Mack. You know, they're upgrading this defense to really have some teeth and go after it and get it. You know, Darwin James is one of my favorite players in the league right now. That guy is just a special human being. I really enjoy watching him play this game that I love so much. I could watch him every week line up and play. He's just an incredible player. I like him a lot. Rashawn Slater up front. They went and got Zion Johnson, right, in the first round to help out this offensive line. Corey Lindsey. I think they did a really – huh?
I say he's a good player, Corey Linsley. Yep.
Yeah, and then they went and got Gerald Everett, and they still have Parma at tight end. So, and they still have Ecker and then they got Isaiah Spiller. And they got Josh Kelly when they called his number last year. He came in and played well. So again, they have, like you said, it's a really good roster. It's one of the better rosters we've seen. And I haven't even talked about Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer, who I like at receiver. So it's a very good team. If the coaches figure it out and can get them in a rhythm, this can be a very explosive team. I think the NFC or AFC West is going to be the most competitive division in football. And these guys are like old school, going to beat up on each other week in and week out. Like I said, over on the East, right? There's going to the Buffalo Bills have pretty much 4 easy games, and then they got to play New England, right? That's my take on the AFC East. Here, it's going to be a dogfight each and every week. It's going to be a dogfight, and I think it's going to come down to who can run the football better in this division. Even though they have all these quarterbacks, I think it's going to be who can run the football better and more effectively to win this division. But you can see 3 playoff teams in this division, because when they play outside of their division, I think this division's going to pick up a lot of games that way. Inside the division, I mean, it's going to come down, I think, to the last weekend. Whoever plays each other last weekend for the division title, it's going to be that close. I don't think anybody in this division's blowing out anybody else. I just don't see that right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can see him completely splitting this division, man. Like all of them go 2-2, right? Like just right down the middle, because they're just kind of working each other, you know? Like it's a very competitive division. David, look at the time that we made tonight, man. This is fantastic. You take a breath for a second, because I'm going to kick it to you in a second to do the last word of the night. But I want to thank everybody out there, whether you are on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, or if you are listening on your favorite podcast platform. Please rate, review this podcast. If you could share it too, we would really appreciate it. Keep show them the good show that we are continuing, a great show that we are continuing to build here. It's a little unmuzzled sports talk, focusing on the business side of sports. As is always, I am Ryan Roberts at Rise and Draft. This is David Turner at Mab_sports. I'm kicking it to David Turner for the final word, or words, I guess, of the night.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. I just want to say, like, I'm jonesing for football, and I don't know who else is. I mean, I'll be honest, I love it. I love that we can get in here in June and talk about these rosters as deep as we can, bringing this to the audience, because you know what? Come August, when they start playing preseason games, and come September when it starts hitting for real, everybody's going to be able to say, oh, I told you so, but we're giving it to you in June. We're telling you what to look for in June, and I really like it. Final thought of the night is, you know what? With the negativity in our world that is going on, and the heavy issues that we are all confronting and dealing with on a personal level, as a nation, as a world, I mean, the last 3 years have been extremely trying on us, and it's not letting up. Take time to breathe. Take time to unplug. Take time to enjoy shows like Mavs that really just comes and tries to entertain you, to talk a little sports, not to detract you or distract you, but really just give you a moment to breathe and remember there is fun, enjoyable life still out there, with all these heavy decisions, heavy things that are hitting us from all angles. Like I said, worldwide, the pandemic is still going. Like, there are still people dying daily around the world from this COVID disease. We are finding more out about, you know, different diseases maybe on the way. We got soil issues for farming. We have war happening in Europe again, in Eastern Europe. I mean, it is a lot to deal with. And on the home front, we have split factions everywhere and trials and stuff going on. We all know what's happening.
Yep.
I don't care what side of the fence you're on. I don't care what aisle you sit in. Just enjoy a breath once in a while. Unplug, unwind, enjoy shows like Mavs. Like Ryan said, share with people who you think would have fun with it. Share with people who you would enjoy it, because that's what we really want to be, a smile on your face once in a while. We will do some heavier shows, absolutely. But most often, we just want to be the show that you tune into, you talk ball with, and you have fun with.
Mav Sports Take, episode 89. Thank you all for joining us.